So the TikTok preacher that does not believe that homosexuality is a sin. Is there really a preacher like that? All I'm asking you to do is to consider what you and I claim to believe, that the Bible is the final authority. If you claim to be a Christian and you claim to follow Jesus and you claim to believe the Bible, let's look at the Bible. Is it possible that some of the things you've been taught about things that you think are so clear could possibly need restudying? All right. Now, it is strange to me, and I've heard the abomination verses. And listen, if you are watching this and you say, I just don't get why they keep talking about this Leviticus verse about abominations. I don't either, because if you go through and look at all the things that the book of Leviticus calls an abomination, then they're all committing abominations, everybody that's ever condemned you. But we won't get into that right now. Let's just talk about the one they use. All right, Leviticus 20 and verse 13. It is an abomination for a man to lie with a male as with a woman. Now, there's two words in that text, in that statement, two Hebrew words that are used to describe males. Now, if he's talking about two men, two grown men, consensual men in a monogamous relationship, why didn't he use the same word? You say, I thought he did. Well, the Bible was written in Hebrew, and any Greek scholar and any Hebrew scholar will tell you the truth, if they're honest, where words differentiate. And so in this verse, he uses two different words for male. He says it is an abomination for a man to lie with a male. And in the English Standard Version, which is a very reliable translation, conservative scholars all agree that it's a good translation, they actually make the differentiation. They recognize that there's two different words there. In other words, he doesn't say if a man lies with a man, he says if a man lies with a male. Why is it translated that way? Because there's two words that are used there for male. All right, now why would he do that? Well, consider this. Okay, now if your mind is closed, you're not the one we're trying to reach. There's some people that are just not going to consider anything other than what they've already been told. We get that. Okay, but for those of you who are concerned that we want to make sure that we're teaching the truth and that we're learning the truth, and especially those of you who have been hurt by people who have tried to browbeat you with the Bible, you might particularly be interested in this as well. He mentions some terrible, terrible sins there in the book of Leviticus. He speaks of relations with animals. He speaks of relations with corpses. He speaks of relations with your father's wife. He speaks of relations with your sister. He speaks of relations with a neighbor's wife. All things that every civilized group in the world would say these things are wrong. I mean, you're just not supposed to do that. But in the middle of that, he throws in two consensual adults who are not hurting anybody, but they are in a loving, monogamous relationship. They think that's what is being talked about in Leviticus 18 and also in Leviticus 20. There is something missing from that list. And this is what is, when I said there are questions I could ask you that you can't answer, here is one. Where does the Bible condemn relations with someone who is not of age to make that decision? And we're a family show, so, we're not just going to blurt things out that would be offensive, but you know exactly what I'm talking about. Someone who is underage. Where does the Bible condemn that? Relations with that kind of relation. If you ask evangelical Bible teachers where the Bible condemns that, they'll say, well, the Bible doesn't condemn it specifically, but the principles are there. Okay, that sounds good. Strange to me, though, that he would go to the trouble of mentioning relations with animals, relations with corpses, relations with immediate family members, but leave out what has to be. And in God's eyes, if you look at the way Jesus talked about little children, let the little children come to me. Anybody that hurts one of these little children, it'd be better for that man never to have been born. Strange that he leaves that one out. Or did he? Did he leave that one out? Why does he use two different words for male in that verse in Leviticus chapter 20? He could be saying it is an abomination for a man to lie with a boy, and for a woman to lie with a girl. In other words, to take advantage of and to abuse someone who is not of age. All of the sins that he mentions have to do in some way with committing a sin that will hurt somebody. If a person has relations with an animal, it's going to hurt them. Okay. If a person steals his neighbor's wife, it's going to hurt somebody. All of God's laws have to do with hurting people, it seems to me. Every abomination that he mentions there of a sexual nature. So why would he throw that one in? Relations between two consenting adults, but ignore one that is based on abuse of the most vulnerable people in our society, children. Why would the Bible not address that? The Bible does address that. The verses that you use to condemn monogamous, loving relationships between consensual adults are talking about something that was rampant in all the nations around Israel that he was warning them against. Paul also deals with it in the New Testament because it was rampant throughout the Roman Empire, and that is taking advantage of vulnerable children. The Bible does condemn that. The evangelicals are wrong when they say the Bible does not directly condemn that. That's what it directly condemns. If it condemns the other, if it condemns the consensual monogamous, then it condemns it in principle. And that's, we'll get into that into another video. But I just asked you a question you can't answer. Why does the Bible not condemn the worst kind of assault and abuse? It does. But if you interpret it the way evangelicals and all these other man-made groups interpret it and apply it to grown people who are not hurting anybody, then the Bible doesn't address it. I say the Bible does address it. So think about that and consider that carefully when you spew your hatred towards people who are grown and are not hurting you and not hurting anybody else.